Welcome to Inside the Arena, your source for everything off the ice, off the court, and outside the field of play. With your hosts, KOMO Sports Director Nico Tamurian and KOMO Senior Reporter Chris Daniels.
I'm waving to people outside our studio here.
Right.
I mean, it's a big show.
This is a big show, and we heard a lot of that at Climate Pledge Arena last Friday.
Oh, I see what you did there.
Oh.
Episode number 20. 20 we've done already on a weekly basis. This one is, I guess in a way, an emergency pod.
So to speak.
Airing after Monday Night Football on the Mothership on KOMO News, and then, of course, all of our platforms. Yeah, all our audio and video platforms, and the CW later in the week, so we're hitting them all. We're touching all the bases in more ways than one.
Well, yeah, and it's a perfect timing because there's so much to unpack, and we'll get into this at length, right? But when you're talking about a preseason game, to a casual observer on paper, it's like, what are you guys getting all excited about? But as we'll dive into in this show, you and I approach this from different angles, and there's a lot to unpack with this for what it means for what we hope is a bright basketball future in Seattle.
Yeah, and for people that are listening to us or viewing us for the first time, what we handle on Inside the Arena is issues that are going on off the ice, off the court, off the field of play, kind of the business of sports, philanthropy of sports. And we see a lot of that related to the NBA and what we saw this past week at Climate Pledge Arena, a game that perhaps was bigger than just an exhibition affair between the Los Angeles Clippers and the Portland Trail Blazers. That's something that we're going to talk about in depth on this episode. You and I were both there. The game was kind of secondary, although it came down to the last minute.
Great game, yeah.
It was a great game between two teams with owners that are based in the Seattle area. Mm-hmm. It's funny how that works out. And we're going to get, again, in-depth. One thing that we like to do, though, every week, we like to touch all the bases. It's something that we call Four Corners here. The good and the bad in the world of sports business. And Nico always batting leadoff here to take us down to first. What do you like this week?
There's a lot of positive, and one you're going to talk about in just a minute here. But there's something else that, again, we talk about this, the idea that Seattle sports always has something going on. And I think about when you look at last week, we had two Seahawks games in a span of 4 days. Okay, they lost them both, so that's necessarily a good thing. But it's also the idea that in the middle there, we had the Kraken opener. And then a few days later in that same building, of course, we had this NBA preseason game that we're talking about. And, of course, as this week goes on, we have more big announcements about the World Cup coming. I know that's a big story you're on. And it's just, man, we're so lucky to talk sports in Seattle, aren't we?
Yeah, in 24, 25, 26, the NCAA tourney coming back to Climate Pledge Arena, the FIFA Club World Cup later that year in 2025, and then, of course, the World Cup in 2026. Again,
that all?
Yeah, I mean, Beth Knox at the Seattle Sports Commission has been doing a great job recruiting some of these events. Speaking of recruiting, Steve Ballmer recruited the Blazers to play his Clippers at Climate Pledge Arena. I'll say what's positive this week. Steve Ballmer's having a heck of a week.
Yes, he is.
We stood next to him as he was, this is where we like to kind of take back the curtain. He was at Climate Pledge Arena watching that team practice, the Clippers practice, 3 hours, plus hours before an exhibition game. He's that deeply involved watching the team warm up, talking to executives around the court. And unbeknownst to us, as we were standing there, 60 Minutes had him queued up for a big story on Sunday night called Ballmer's Ball Game. Mm-hmm. And really, he has this moment in time. That story talked about his history, obviously, with Microsoft and Detroit and his upbringing. But think about this. Not only did he have that exhibition game here, he's opening his brand new more than $1 billion palace down in Inglewood into an arena that it looked pretty cool on TV.
Oh,
Some of the LED lights. He was explaining how in that new arena, they'll be able to tell who the loudest fan is at every single site. There's also the T-shirt cannon that can hit every seat. And when he was walking around with the correspondent, you could see the lights twinkling underneath all the seats. There's going to be a lot of coordinated things they can do in that arena, of course, with the 360-degree scoreboard. He talked about what he wants from the fan base down there. It's also going to be an Olympic site. So he's got all of that kicking off this week. And then on top of that, we've seen him really push USA Facts, which is something that he started a few years ago here locally, presenting data that's unvarnished for people to discuss during this election cycle. He's also, if you've seen the commercials on Como and elsewhere, he's heavily involved in I-2117, the initiative that will be on the ballot here in November. He and his wife Connie have donated the most amount of money against that initiative. So he's got his hands in a lot of things right now as a guy who retired from Microsoft, and he definitely, I think, probably walked away from that experience on Friday night at Climate Pledge Arena feeling pretty good about how it all went.
And a pretty down-to-earth guy. I mean, as we were watching, I just kind of, I went to shoot my shot, see if he was going to do an interview. And he said yes, actually.
Yeah.
But, his handlers were kind of like, well, Mr. Ballmer, hang on a second. And probably because of the 60 Minutes interview. But I was just struck by, you've got the handlers that are kind of like, yeah. And, the guy is worth about $100 and some odd billion. And here comes random sports reporter in Seattle. Hey, Mr. Ballmer, can we talk? And he couldn't have been more gracious. It was really cool and didn't work out. Not through his fault or anything. But I was just struck by that, like, pretty down-to-earth dude right here.
Yeah, and I think, again, pulling the curtain back here, the reason why Steve Ballmer does a interview with 60 Minutes is because he has multiple things he's trying to promote. Usually that there is a slot on that show that's all about promoting a book or something that's right around the corner. He definitely has a few irons in the fire, so to speak here.
Yeah.
Okay, so what don't you like this week?
Okay, I hope I don't go on too much of a rant here. Listen, I completely, totally understand. It's been a long road, okay, for fans that want the Sonics to come back. We're going on 16 years now, and there's been heartbreak along the way, and you've been on the front lines of that all, from 08 to 2013, all of these steps, right? We don't have to rehash that. We've done that plenty on the show, and unless you want to dive into it. But my point is this. I understand it's been a long road, but the mere fact that you've got certain folks, and this is especially social media, which I'm a strong believer is not indicative of the larger society. It's almost like the vocal minority, so to speak.
Yeah.
But gosh, you're posting something really kind of, benign about, oh, here's Steve Ballmer saying Seattle fans are great, or, oh, here's Matisse Thybulle saying he would love for the NBA to be back in his hometown. And man, the people on there are like, oh, I'm done. I'm done waiting. The NBA is this and that. And then you have certain, personalities playing into that. Like, hold the phone here. Like, this isn't just, I want the NBA back. That's not how it works.
There's a process.
There's a huge process. We're billions and billions of dollars. Whether it's from the Seattle perspective and the money needed to bring the team here, whether it's from the NBA making sure this is the right investment. We all know it is, but they have to do their due diligence. They have to figure out their TV deal. They have to figure out the Boston Celtics, Sal. And so the notion that you have people that are like, oh, I'm done waiting, stop it. And you have people playing into that, stop it. This is a process. And if you want to celebrate in, according to ESPN, 27, 28, maybe it's sooner, I don't know, but just hang on. Yes, it takes a few years to make these things happen. I mean, shoot, Climate Pledge wasn't ready until 2021. That was step one, at least from the Seattle end of things. And, of course, the NBA had their own timeline as well. So that's my negative on the basis here is the notion that, well, because you want the NBA back right now. And I even saw some folks, being, when they saw what Steve Ballmer said, they were like, why can't he just move the Clippers up here?
He just built a brand new arena.
Yes. And remember, he was part of and you know this, he was part of that last-dish effort to try and save the Sonics back. He did try.
Yeah, and he's making the effort now by hosting this event and trying to show the NBA that this building is ready to host another team. And yeah, to your point, the NHL team was awarded in December of 2018.
Right.
The arena opened in 2021. What you were just referring to, a lot of social media activity over the weekend after this game. That wasn't really new. It was reporting a couple-week-old ESPN story that said the NBA is focused on 27-28 for an expansion franchise. I think if you look at this objectively and the longer this process plays out, yes, you're likely looking at 27-28 because you're going to need a 2-year runway. If the NBA decides this season the latest phrasing from Adam Silver to address expansion, yes, this is going to drag out.
It's 27 is the earliest, or it's almost 25 already.
Yeah.
I suspect 25 is when we hear about probably even just the committee being formed. It's going to take some time.
Yeah, there was an expectation, and I think and we'll talk about this some more. There was an expectation this game was going to be a launching pad of some sort, and a tip-off is what we heard it described by another person. It didn't happen. It has been delayed, it looks like, because of these variables, which we have talked about on past episodes of Inside the Arena. And so the longer this drags out, the likelihood of a start date, yes, it becomes 27-28. Can I tell you what I don't like this week?
Have at it.
I don't want to go on too much of a rant here.
Yeah, we got time, Chris.
But as a guy who watches the Washington State University football games, Cougar football,
they look good.
There has been a couple of games, have been a couple of games on Fox Sports, and they have not been traveling to the game.
Oh, right.
And they did it with Boise State. I went to that Boise State game, and they did it this past weekend with Fresno State. And it is time for Fox to start traveling to these games. You start noticing the tendencies when you're watching these games. So what happens is they show the announcers on a green screen before a stadium at the start of the game, but they're not actually in the stadium. And in this case, Fresno's right up the road from L.A. They're broadcasting from L.A. No sideline reporter. And so these two guys who are sitting in a booth in Los Angeles are trying to make educated guesses about what's going on a sideline, or if somebody's injured, or how long they're going to be injured. There's a distinct difference in the broadcast. They did it with Boise State. They missed things with Boise State, from what I'm told in those broadcasts. Fox has done this for years. This was pre-pandemic even, especially with some of the old Sounders games when they were playing in the Champions League. They would just broadcast these games from a booth. It's time for people now, almost 5 years after the start of the pandemic, to get back. And we know the amount of money that they're throwing around for the broadcast rights of these games. They can throw around a little bit more to just drive up the road to Fresno and do them in person.
Without a doubt. I mean, you're talking about in some instances with that particular network where being in person can be the exception outside of the big game. It needs to be flipped around.
And I like Petros Papadakis. I just like saying his name, and I think he does a good job on the broadcast. But
for sure.
It's definitely different.
Yeah,
when
this
they
isn't
are
on
not
the
in
talent.
person. Yeah. Okay. Now, let's talk something we do every week. We call it the Supersonic Minute, right? But we're really going to take up the rest of the minutes on this broadcast talking about the Supersonics, given that exhibition game at Climate Pledge that we've already talked about. But I'll give you some initial thoughts, Nico. There was, going into the game, I think some people were kind of, here we go again. There's not going to be any sort of announcement. There were people kind of circulating in town. They thought there was going to be an announcement. But people who are close to this, who have been involved with the arena, I think there was, some... The enthusiasm wasn't there necessarily going into this game, knowing that there wasn't going to be an announcement. But you and I were both there. I would tell you that there were all hands on deck as far as Climate Pledge Arena staff and concessionaires are concerned. They clearly wanted to make a great impression with that game. It was definitely different than what we saw the year before with the Utah Jazz in terms of ticket sales, in terms of staffing. They wanted to make a positive impression. I think people walked out of the arena feeling much better about the situation than maybe they did a week ago, knowing there wasn't going to be an announcement.
Well, and it's what Adam Silver told you back in September. I mean, they watch all these things.
Yeah.
They're paying attention. And it goes back to what I was saying a minute ago. This isn't just some preseason game. I mean, these are things, okay, yeah, we're entertained by it and whatnot, but this is almost like an audition. And whether it's the arena, whether it's the reception from Seattle fans, which was awesome. I mean, it was loud in there. I mean, we passed that test, in my opinion. If Adam Silver was sitting in his office or his couch or wherever he was, his plane, and was watching that on, whatever streaming service or whatever, and I think he came away like, okay, this is the third year in a row they've done this game. They keep basically selling it out, or at least close to it. And we're talking about preseason. We're talking about practice. We're talking about preseason.
Okay, Allen Iverson.
You know what I'm saying? Like, it's a great impression.
Well, and, one of the things that the clips, we were talking about stuff that's been circulating online. One of the clips involved Sam Mitchell, the former coach, was on NBA TV doing kind of the pre and post for some of these games. And he had an exchange with his co-host that kind of went viral. But at the end of that clip, they were showing Climate Pledge, and he went off saying, "How do we not have a team in Seattle? It's a great NBA market." And saying this on their mothership to all of their fans across the world. I think that helped as well. Yeah, it was definitely different than the Utah Jazz game. I think going to all three of these now. The first year with Steve Ballmer getting the crowd going and talking about sending a message to New York.
Oh yeah,
it was electric in there. It was still pretty good against the Jazz, but there was something missing because the Blazers weren't involved or a team with another local hook. And so this year, I think it definitely got back to that first year level with all of the people involved with Oakview that were running around. With I know Rick Welts, I spotted him in the audience, who's been working as a consultant for the Seattle group, and we've talked about Rick on this show, the former Warriors president, the former executive with the NBA, the guy who came up with All-Star Weekend, deep connections with the NBA, former Warriors president. He was there. So I'm sure all of that information is getting relayed back and forth to New York as well.
And we look about how many people were there, not just the number, but like we're talking about Gary, Sean, Detlef, just a who's who across Seattle sports for that matter. It was just really cool to see. And I'll say this, Chris, Sam Mitchell was not the only one with high praise for Seattle. That was arguably for me personally, my favorite part is seeing what all these different folks, and we're putting it together for everybody to check out here, whether it was the players that we talked to, we're going to hear in a second, Nico Batum, great name. He's like, I don't believe we already have a team here. Like, this guy's been around 17 years. Like, and when you hear him say that, like, why do we not have a team here? Shared by the players, certainly some local guys involved, but while we love to hear what Matisse Thybulle has to say, local guy, of course this means something to him. To me, it strikes when you hear Ty Lue, Derek Jones Jr., and Nico Batum saying what they're saying. We're going to play this clip for you. I think it carries so much more weight when these guys from out of town have this praise for Seattle. We talked a minute ago about this city and how much it wants the NBA back. How do you think Seattle, this new arena, would fit within the NBA?
I mean, I'm just shocked it didn't happen yet, though. I mean, it's going to happen at some point. I hope it will. But, this city deserves like an NBA team now. Went to watch the Seahawks last night. Great football team, great baseball town, soccer, everything. WNBA, they just missed one thing. And it's going to happen, I think.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
You got it.
The NBA might be missing on Seattle.
You need two teams in the Northwest. You need two. It's going to happen.
It's amazing. It's my first time actually being in Seattle. In the summertime, I'm going to definitely bring my wife back so we can have some fun out here in Seattle because I heard of some things out here that you can do with your significant other.
We're here with Matisse Thybulle. You're back home. How's this feel?
It's been pretty cool. Yeah, it's been a fun trip down memory lane. Cool to share it with my teammates and the team.
We know, obviously, fans here in Seattle miss the Sonics. They miss the NBA. What does it mean that your team is part of it? For one night only, anyway, that's giving it back to them.
I mean, I've come to these games as a fan, so it's pretty cool to be on the other side of it. And like you said, to get an NBA team back here is the goal. So the more games we can get, the better.
And, we saw you talking to Coach over there, just talking about East Side and all these. I mean, for you to come back here, is that kind of a full circle? Even if it's preseason, is it kind of a full circle moment for you in that regard?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, to get NBA teams back here is pretty cool. I mean, I won't be satisfied until it's a Sonics jersey and a Sonics court, but for the time being, this works.
Seattle's a basketball town, right?
I mean, absolutely. I'm always getting in arguments with my teammates about like basketball cities and who's got the best talent, and Seattle's always making a case.
Appreciate you. Thank you.
I mean, the atmosphere is great. This is neither one of these teams are their teams, and they come out, support, and sell out. Bringing back all the Seattle greats, and then Lenny Wilkins, you got GP and Sean Kemp over there with Detlef and Jamal, got Isaiah, Richard, everybody in the stands, and it's just good to see, and it just tells you like how much this city wants a basketball team, and they deserve it.
We deserve it.
So says Ty Lue.
Right?
Well, and you were talking about all the names of the people that were there. This had a little added weight too because we saw Seattle Mayor Bruce Harrell sitting courtside, Dow Constantine, King County Executive, sitting courtside. Next to Harrell for most of the night, Rob Saka, Seattle City Council member. We saw Joey Hollingsworth, who's got a great basketball background, also sitting courtside. Senator Maria Cantwell came through. So this was one of those events which kind of transcended sports and politics after all of these years as Climate Pledge Arena goes into year 4. And again, I think that it could not have gone better for the people that are trying to recruit the NBA, who have now had 3 different events to show that this city is interested and continues to be interested. We were talking about this last week on the air. The Seattle Metropolitan Chamber of Commerce puts out a poll. They surveyed 700 registered voters across the city and asking them about long-term strategies and priorities. People are excited about light rail between West Seattle and Ballard. They're excited about the World Cup. And lo and behold, a majority of voters really want to bring back the Sonics and improve Seattle Center more than they are excited about lidding I-5. So there is, I think, some interest. And yes, we talk about fatigue, but there is interest as we continue to go on from more and more people as the demographics in this city have changed.
I can understand, where some of the fatigue comes from. As we mentioned, it's been a long road, but if you're looking at it, certainly in the perspective that you and I do, and we've seen these steps, and we've seen not just Seattle hit the necessary marks, but the NBA stay true to its word on every step of their timeline. I mean, Adam Silver, we know he's meticulous, and he stayed right true it. And so when I see the fatigue, again, I can understand it, but I'm also just hang on. We're like, if this was 08, we're like right here. It doesn't mean it's promised, doesn't mean it's guaranteed, but as far as this process playing out and Seattle doing everything it possibly could have, and the NBA noticing and hopefully probably being okay. I mean, gosh, you never want to, get ahead of these things, but we're close to finally having a solution here.
And for people who did not see the show last week or hear the show or listen to the podcast, it's a show and a podcast. But
it's both.
Kevin Calabro, who is the play-by-play announcer for the Blazers now, you talked to him, the longtime Sonics broadcaster, and he brought this up with you, that the NBA, in his mind, appears to be waiting on the sale of the Celtics. We've heard that from other sources as well, and what that valuation looks like for the valuation of an expansion franchise.
Right. And so we're close. But there's things they have to get done. They have to do their diligence to make sure they're crossing their T's and dotting their I's.
And one of the things that the Seattle folks have tried to do in terms of getting their I's dotted and T's crossed, I always mess that up. I'm afraid to flip it around, is make sure that the calendar is available and they can actually move a ice rink in and out and have a court and how long that takes and just the transformation of the arena, programming the arena, and that is something in advance of the game I talked about with Rosie Sell, who's a Climate Pledge Arena vice president, handles a lot of the marketing, works with the programming staff, and I asked her if an NBA team could move in to Climate Pledge Arena. Here's part of that conversation. You ready for this?
Yeah, we are ready for this. Our 3rd annual Rain City Showcase presented by Pokemon this year. The Trailblazers and the Clippers come back, and so we're super excited for NBA basketball back right here at Climate Pledge Arena.
How do you switch it around from hockey to concerts? I mean, what kind of time does that take?
Oh my gosh, we have one of the best conversion teams, I think, in our operations department. So last night we had Kygo. We've already got the floor down. They're putting decals. All of our tech team is out there plugging in all of the electronics that need to go. It happens all overnight. You know, really, really good crew, and we are really proud of ours because we've done, I think I counted this out this last year, our 3rd year, it's 97 conversions, going from one complete set to a completely different set overnight.
I'm sorry, how many people?
We have 97 conversions that have completed. Our team is, I don't know the exact numbers on our team. Because it depends on the event and what it takes to convert over, but we have one of the best in the biz.
Is it easy to go from ice to hardwood?
It's easier to go from ice to hardwood than it is from hardwood to ice, I believe. So right now you'll see down there's a black decking that is over the top of our Kraken ice, and then we have to put that down, and then you pull the floor out and kind of put it together like a puzzle piece.
How many hours does it take to do that conversion?
Ooh, again, I think it depends on what you're coming from. But it's like done overnight. The floor usually takes, I think, about 2.5, 3 hours, just again, depending on all of the different circumstances.
So let's just say there's another team that comes to town. I mean, can Climate Pledge Arena handle it?
Absolutely. We have been proven to do basketball. We've done we've just completed our 3rd Storm season where we've had to go from Storm basketball to hockey to a concert to anything else under the sun. We've done college basketball. We actually have Gonzaga and Kentucky coming back this December. So we'll be doing elite college basketball. We did the women's regional. We know how to do this building from basketball to hockey, just like we do any other event.
Are there dates on the calendar? Are there available dates on the calendar for another tenant?
Oh, absolutely. We're not the only building that does that, right? And so it takes really good relationships with the leagues and the teams to figure out that puzzle piece. Our programming team does that well in advance of each season, and it is a puzzle. It's a calendar. You're looking at what we can do every given day, and it's a little give and take from everyone, but it's not something that's unheard of in our business, and we're prepared to do it.
How many dates? So we're into year 4 now, which is hard to believe. What's been the amount of dates per calendar year that Climate Pledge has been used?
Oh gosh, it kind of depends, right? So we actually do a lot of private events. That's not something that maybe a lot of the viewers know. But to date from opening, we've done over 600 events if you include our private events. And so that maybe is not converting an entire building, but it's going from a concert and then maybe using one of the clubs for a corporate event the next day. So we're booked almost, I would say, probably 300 days to 320 days a year if you include all of our smaller private events.
So with 300 dates a year, you still have room for another
Absolutely. It's just it's a puzzle piece. You figure it out. You figure out what is priority. How do you move things around? But we want to be a building where ideally we're busy every single day of the year. That's why you build these amazing structures.
Any lessons learned as we head into year 4 of Climate Pledge?
Oh my gosh, we listen to our fans. We do event surveys every single event, so we want to listen to our fans. What's working, what's not working? How do we shift? Maybe if it's like a little operational piece or offering different food and beverage options. So we're constantly learning and getting feedback from our fans, and I think one of that's the biggest part of it is it's going to shift. A new audience coming in with an NBA team potentially we'll have to learn some more with that audience coming in too. But we try to listen and take that feedback and fit it into our operation.
Well done.
Those people are applauding for Rosie.
I mean, that's not an easy job, and she nails it clearly. I was live after the Kraken season opener last Tuesday, 1 o'clock game.
Yeah.
And we actually saw them doing this because the next day there was a concert, and of course after that, 3 days later, was the NBA preseason game. And I mean, they are quick. I mean, we're talking about as soon as I was out of the Kraken locker room, already seeing those blackboards go over the ice and starting to remove the barriers and things like that. And I mean, I would venture to guess within about 2 hours from the final horn at the end of the third period in that Kraken game, they were ready to go for the concert the next night, let alone, of course, basketball to follow.
Yeah, I think I told you I was at the Kraken exhibition game against the Oilers.
Right.
And before the end, Mr. Wright Shane Wright had not even been out on the ice yet to throw the fish. And they were starting to take down the plexiglass. So, I mean, they were doing it that quick after the game to convert it for a concert the next night. I think a lot of people forget that they have multiple concerts there throughout the week in addition to these hockey games, in addition to the Storm.
I have one final buzzer point I want to make here.
Wait. Let's go for it.
We put on the show the last 3 years. Not our show, but I mean the exhibition game.
Yeah.
We know that this is an NBA market. We know the league notices. Bring them back in due time. We'll see. Hopefully, we're seeing them play in 2027. Everything's there. Let's just see it happen. I'm ready for it in a couple years.
You have the final word, Bill Fesh. We nailed it.
Bill, take us out.
You've been listening to Inside the Arena with Nico and Chris. Please subscribe on your favorite platform. Until next time.